Hello, this evening. I want to speak of war, not of its not of any sort of victory, but of the grotesque asymmetry of the difference between a child's railway and a missile silo, between deliberate civilian carnage and targeted military reprisal, between a tyrant's theatre of cruelty and a democracy's agonized defiance. Today, the city of Kharkiv endured what can only be described as a sadistic exhibition of Russian military aggression. Not content with a nightly drone and missile barrage that killed 3 and injured 19, including a baby, Moscow resumed its attack in broad daylight, and this time it deployed KAB-guided bombs, ordnance more often reserved for battlefield precision, against civilian districts in Kharkiv. One bomb struck the children's railway, a charming symbolic site where families gather, where young Ukrainians once dreamt of driving tractors. Fortunately, the opening today had been postponed because of security fears. Had it gone ahead, the death toll might have been unbearable. Still, a 30-year-old Ukrainian Railways employee lost her life, 19 others were injured, many of them railway workers, and several buildings and cars were destroyed, including homes and even a farm building. President Zelensky has described this as brutal and a calculated assault. He's rightly dismissed the Kremlin's claims that such strikes are retaliatory responses to Ukraine's drone campaign. They're not. They're the latest chapter in a long-running Russian narrative. If you cannot conquer a people, you destroy their way of life. Ukraine has not sat idle, it's true. On June the 1st, it launched Operation Spiderweb, a sophisticated mass drone assault against the Russian invaders, against 4 Russian military air bases. It was not aimed at civilians, it was not a scorched earth tactic, it was a surgical retaliation targeting strategic assets. It was brilliant, and Russia's long-range bombers, the very aircraft used to terrorize Ukrainian cities from afar, were taken out, and it hurt. The Russian Ministry of Defense admitted it had to scramble to intercept 174 drones across 11 regions, including Moscow, Bryansk, and even occupied Crimea. Moscow's airports, all 3 of them were temporarily shut. In Saratov, a fire at an industrial site reportedly struck a government-controlled oil depot. In Tambov, 3 people were injured as drone debris ignited another fire. Engels, home to the Engels 2 air base, one of Russia's key strategic bomber sites, was also hit, prompting civilian evacuations. These are not random attacks. Ukraine is dismantling the logistics of terror, oil depots, airfields, weapons factories. By contrast, Russia levels homes, maternity wards, and now children's railways. What is perhaps most chilling is the attempt, echoed grotesquely by former US President Donald Trump, who's now sitting behind the Resolute desk doing nothing, to the attempt by Trump, this 2-time president, to portray Ukraine's defensive actions as provocation, that Ukraine somehow invited the bombing of its own civilians by daring to resist. What absolute twaddle! The man doesn't deserve to be in a position of authority. Trump's words, parroting the Kremlin's propaganda, imply that Ukrainian lives are bargaining chips expendable in the great global chessboard he fails to understand. But as Zelensky retorted with clarity and sorrow, in more than 11 years of Russia's war against Ukraine, they have brought only one new thing to our land: ruins and death. We must call things by their proper names. What Russia is doing in Kharkiv and has done repeatedly in Mariupol, Bucha, Bakhmut is not strategy, it is savagery. And the intentional targeting of civilians is a war crime under international law. Bombing a children's park is not a grey area. Oh, and before one or two of the trolls and the absurd people claimed that Bucha was a self-inflicted attack by Ukraine. How absurd is that? How absurd, particularly given the demonstrable attacks against civilians that are going on, even at this moment, in Kharkiv. Ukraine's response to all this, by contrast, is focused, legal, and proportionate. Its drones do not seek to punish civilians, but to cripple the machinery of destruction. As rescuers dig through rubble in Kharkiv and Ukrainian drones disable airfields in Saratov, we are witnessing not just war, but a moral reckoning. Russia chooses to bomb babies. Ukraine chooses to blind bombers. Let's have no illusions about moral equivalence here. There is none. One side seeks liberty from the aggressive invaders. The other seeks ruin. And in that distinction lies the entire story of this war.